The day my brother almost took the house, he brought flowers. White lilies, the kind that pretend to smell like innocence. He set them on my mother's kitchen table in Valencia and kissed her cheeks like a son who never learned how to leave teeth marks in anything. For Nana Teresa, he said, glancing up at the framed photo of our grandmother smiling in her apron. Adrian is 2 years younger than me and has always walked like every room is already his. I am Sophia, the sister who fixes things, the one who remembers birthdays and keeps spare keys. People like Adrian call people like me safe. When Nana died, she left the house to us equally, and our mother, Marta, could live there as long as she wished. The will was simple. Nana made it simple on purpose so that nothing else about grief would have to carry a gavel. We sat with Senior Bianchi, the family notary, and signed the papers. Equal split, he said. No surprises. Adrian nodded, squeezed my shoulder, and promised to handle the boring parts. You've always hated paperwork, he reminded me, and I let the word always work on me like a charm. The first slip felt small. A letter arrived from the utilities company addressed to owner A. Marine. My mother handed it to me with a worried little pinch at her mouth. Is this right? She asked in Spanish, trying not to make it a plea. I called Adrian. He laughed. Administrative template, he said. I'll fix it. The second slip was larger. A notice from the property registry requesting confirmation of a reallocation addendum. I had not signed any addendum. Neither had my mother. Adrian said, Bianchi must have updated the file and changed the subject to dinner. I grew up in a house where you write the date on leftovers and you write names on tools. Nana wrote recipes in a tight, upright hand, and when she died, I took her recipe box not because anyone else wanted it, but because order has always been a kind of love in my mouth. I started a folder on my laptop called House. I scanned every document, labeled emails, saved PDFs. When I couldn't sleep, I looked up the property register portal to see if anything moved while I wasn't looking. It did. 2 weeks later, the portal showed a pending change. Exclusive ownership transfer to a Marine upon caregiver clause. The clause did not exist in Nana's will. The note said, addendum dated June, notarized. June had taken Nana away in a blur of hospital corridors. We had not sat with any notary in June. My heart made a sound like a door slamming in an empty house. I went to see Bianchi. His office smelled like furniture polish and archive boxes. He is a careful man whose spectacles always look like they're about to fall but never do. Sophia, he said, standing as if I were the one with the gavel now. Your grandmother was clear. There is no addendum on file here. He turned his monitor and showed me his system. The original will, our signatures, my mother's lifetime right, and nothing else. Then where did the registry get this? I asked, showing him the portal printout. He frowned in a new way. Either someone submitted a forged addendum or someone is using my office's seal without my knowledge. He tapped a pencil against the desk, a slow metronome of thought. May I request a copy from the registry? Please, I said, and my voice sounded like Nana's when she caught us lying in small ways. We never lied to her in large ones because we were not stupid. 2 days later, Bianchi called me back. He had the addendum in a neat envelope and a face that told me we were about to stop pretending. We put on cotton gloves and slid out a single page on thick paper with an embossed seal that looked good if you didn't know what good looked like. The language twisted love into threat. In recognition of the caregiver's exceptional contributions, I hereby allocate exclusive title to my grandson, Adrian Marine, upon my passing. It cited a witness who was not a witness I had ever met, and it wore my mother's shaky signature in a way that made my throat go hot. At the bottom, a notary stamp copied from Bianchi's office. The seal was real, The hand that pressed it was not his. "Someone is friends with the stamp," he said, voice clipped, offended in a way decent men get when the rules are treated like suggestions. "This is felony fraud." He looked at me like I was a match. "What do you want to do?" The part of me that wanted to scream was loud. The part that wanted to blast this page across every family chat and drag Adrian into the street was louder. But the part that had learned to play fair, even with people who burned houses for warmth, was the quietest and the sharpest. "I wanted to sign it back while everyone who matters is watching," I said. "I want him to confess with a pen." We built a stage. Bianchi drew up a correction deed, a clean document that rescinded any and all addenda, reinstated the original will, and assigned administrative control to me for 5 years so that utilities and taxes couldn't be weaponized again. He added a clause with calm, lethal precision. Signer acknowledges that any prior attempt to alter title without the consent of all parties was fraudulent. He said, "It will hold, the way a good carpenter taps a beam." I asked my mother if we could host a family lunch to honor Nana on Sunday and invite our aunts and cousins. She nodded so fast I thought she might be dizzy. "We could use a little honoring," she said, and kissed my forehead like it would help. I needed proof more than anger. I stopped by the print shop where the fake addendum had been stamped. Adrian isn't careful, and Valencia is small in the right corners. The young clerk blinked when I asked about the job with Bianchi's seal. "We never stamp here," he said too quickly. I met his eyes and waited. Silence wants to be filled if you love it long enough. He sighed. A man came with a brass seal and asked to use the press. He said the notary was next door. He printed 1 page. Paid cash. I asked for the security camera stills. He printed a blurred photo of a familiar jawline under a cap and a clear frame of the brass seal. I paid for the prints and left a tip because sometimes money is how you thank people for courage. Adrian arrived early on Sunday with new lilies and old charm. My aunts came with flan and gossip, my cousins with loud babies, my mother with a dress she hadn't worn since my father took her to Madrid for their 10th anniversary. We sat at the long table under the lemon tree and let the food take the edge off our nerves. I stood to speak and watched my brother's eyes flick to the sideboard where the property file sat like any other stack of papers. He wasn't nervous. That would come later. "I want to read something of Nana's," I said, holding up her recipe box like it was a Bible, because for us it is. She wrote, "A house is a body, a home is a heart. Don't steal a body and call it love." I looked at my brother then, gently, the way you look at a dog you have to take to the vet. "We have a problem." The table stilled. People who clatter went quiet. I took out the forged addendum and placed it on the table between the olives and the bread, then placed the registrar's return envelope on top, like a lid. "This arrived at the registry with a stamp from Bianchi's office," I said. "It says the house belongs to Adrian alone." Aunts gasped and then tried to turn the gasp into a cough. My mother's hand went to her throat like it wanted company. Adrian smiled, but his eyes did a small, private flinch. "I think you're misunderstanding," he said. "It's an administrative thing. Caregiver clause. I was here every day at the hospital. Nobody's taking anything from anyone. Caregiving is love," I said. "Stealing is theft. They are not cousins." I lifted a second page, the correction deed, and laid it out like a map back to decency. "This fixes the problem. It restores the will and confirms that any attempt to change it without consent was fraud. If you sign, we close the box. If you don't, we open it wider with the police." He laughed, the bright sound people make when their luck has not stopped paying dividends. "You're being dramatic," he said. "Why would I sign something that calls me a criminal?" "Because this calls you honest," I said, tapping the clause that said any previous attempt, without naming him, was fraudulent. It gives you a chance to say you didn't know. It gives you a way to choose your family instead of your appetite. I laid down the print shop still, the one with his jaw under the cap and the brass seal on the counter. Or we can talk about this angle with the detective. Our Aunt Lucia, who changes the temperature of a room just by slowing her breath, looked at the photo, then at him. Adri, she said softly, Spanish wrapping his name the way it did when he was small. ¿Qué has hecho? What have you done? He reached for the forged addendum with a little too much urgency, like he might want to pocket the evidence. I slid it away. No, I said. We'll keep the toys on the table. My mother stood, and steadier than I expected, placed her hand on my shoulder. Your grandmother named you both, she said.
Equal.
If you wanted thanks for care, you ask for thanks. You don't take her house. He looked around and found no friendly eyes. Charm is currency that only spends in shadows. In the light, it turns to plain money. He exhaled, longer than a sigh. Fine, he said. If this is what it takes to stop the drama. He reached for the pen. Wait, I said, because revenge is delicious, but legality is a meal. We sign with the notary. I nodded to the garden gate. Bianchi, who had been waiting with the patience of a saint and the posture of a bailiff, stepped in with his ledger. Good afternoon, he said, as if greeting a neighbor and not the pivot of a small family's orbit. Adrian sputtered. You invited the notary? I invited a witness, I said. The house deserves one. We assembled around the garden table, like children doing homework. Bianchi read the correction deed aloud, each clause a step down from the fevered dream into the cool hallway of fact. When he reached the line about acknowledging prior fraudulent attempts, he paused. Do you understand this? He asked Adrian, voice not unkind. Adrian swallowed. He looked at the aunts, at our mother, at me. I understand, he said, and the shape of the words made him smaller in a way that might, if he was lucky, make him better.
He signed.
Bianchi countersigned. My mother signed with a hand that shook and then didn't. I signed last and felt something land inside my ribs like a stone that holds a table steady. It was done. Not the pain, not the rearrangement of trust that would follow us like a dog we had not invited, but the deed. The registry took the correction the next day, and the pending change was gone as quickly as a fever that breaks at dawn. Quick mid-CTA. In your family, if a sibling tried to steal an inheritance, would you confront them quietly or set a public, legal reveal like this? Comment quiet or public, and tell me why. Subscribe if you want more stories where proof does the talking. In the days after, the phone became a courtroom. Cousins called with whispers. He told us he was protecting your mother. A friend messaged. He said you care more about papers than people. I didn't argue with anyone. Arguing is a net. You get tangled in what someone else wants you to hold. I sent a photo of the signed correction deed to our family chat with no caption. Facts don't need applause. Adrian came by once to collect a few things he'd left in the garage. He stood in the doorway of the kitchen like a boy who'd been sent to ask for sugar. Are you proud of yourself? He asked, not meeting my eyes. No, I said. I am relieved. He opened his mouth and then shut it because sometimes silence is the only instrument person can play without practice. He left the lilies wilting in their vase and the keys on the hook. My mother did not cut him out like a tumor. She is braver than I am in ways I can't explain. She called him on Sundays, asked if he'd eaten, told him the lemons were abundant this year. He answered in tilted syllables that made me tired. The aunts drew new maps of loyalty, the cousins learned to pause before speaking, and the house exhaled. I painted the living room the color of cream and hung Nana's aprons on a small hook where I could see them every morning. The recipe box sat on the shelf like a quiet witness who would testify if you asked her nicely. Weeks later, Bianchi invited me to his office to pick up the final registry confirmation. He slid the paper across the desk like a verdict. "You were precise," he said. "It saved you." I nodded because sometimes applause is a kind of weather a woman needs to feel on her skin to remember she lives here. Adrian sent a message that evening. "I'm sorry." Not for what, not to whom, not how. A younger version of me would have asked for a better apology, the shape of remorse that fits cleanly into the box labeled justice. The version of me who had carried a pen like a blade and then put it down wrote back, "Thank you. When you're ready to talk about what you did, not what you meant, come for coffee." Here is my lesson in a family: theft rarely looks like a mask and a gun. It looks like help that takes. It sounds like tradition. It arrives with flowers. If you are the person who keeps the keys, keep the papers too. Write everything down. Make a stage where the truth can speak without you raising your voice. And when you can, leave the door unlocked but not open. Forgiveness isn't a welcome mat. It's a lock you choose to turn when the person outside has learned how to knock. What would you have done? Expose him at lunch like I did? Or handle it quietly with lawyers only? Comment public or quiet, and tell me your line.